The Empire freaks out. How did a human battleship get so near? The galaxy had always seemed safe to the Imperial commanders. The outer defense networks, millions of kilometers of sensors and patrol ships, had never failed. The Empire had ruled its space for centuries, and no enemy had ever come close to breaking its borders. That was what Admiral Carl Benson believed as he sat in the High Command Tower, looking at the glowing maps that showed thousands of star systems under their control. He sipped his lukewarm coffee and frowned. Something was not right. A red alert flashed across the main screen. The message was short but shocking. A large object had appeared in the northern sector, deep inside the exclusion zone. The sector was thought to be empty for decades. No ship should have been able to enter without being detected. Impossible, Carl muttered, leaning forward. No one should be able to reach this far without detection. Lieutenant Ellen Moore, sitting beside him, shook her head. Admiral, the scans are clear. There is a vessel. It is massive, and it is moving toward us slowly. Carl turned to the main console and looked at the object on the screen. The shape was unusual, unlike any ship the Empire had built or studied. It was sleek, almost too simple in design. Its hull reflected no light, and sensors barely detected any heat. "It's quiet," Carl whispered. Ellen nodded. "Too quiet. Even a small ship would have some signature, but this, nothing. No engines, no exhaust, no mass signature." Carl felt a chill run down his spine. He had been in command for more than 30 years. He had seen rebellions, smugglers, pirate fleets, and alien raiders. But this was something different. He pressed the button to summon the council. "Call the council immediately." "I want everyone in the command room in 10 minutes. The council arrived quickly. Governor Paul Harris was the first to speak. "Admiral, we are being warned that an unidentified vessel has entered restricted space. Do we know what it is?" Carl shook his head. "Not yet. The sensors can tell us very little. It appears to be human, though." There was a pause in the room. Human? That alone made the commanders tense. Humans were thought to be backward, weak, and scattered across small systems. The Empire had never considered humans a real threat. They were not like the other advanced species who had fleets and warships in numbers no one could match. Humans were simple, but something about this ship was different. Ellen spoke again, her voice calm but tense. "The vessel is approaching fast. If it continues on its current path, it will be within striking distance of our main defense station in less than 12 hours. The room fell silent. 12 hours. That was not enough time to organize a proper fleet. The Empire could not send reinforcements in time. The ships in the nearest system were at least 6 hours away. If this vessel intended to attack, they would not have a chance. Governor Harris leaned forward. "Then we must respond immediately, send all available ships. Destroy it before it can reach the station." Carl raised his hand. "Wait, we do not know what we are dealing with. Firing blindly could be dangerous. We need more information." Another officer, Captain Kevin Ross, spoke up. "With all respect, Admiral, our scanners show no weapons or aggressive movement. Yet. It could be a trap. They could have weapons we cannot detect." Carl rubbed his forehead. "This is exactly what worries me. If it is human, it may not be what we think. Humans, they have done strange things before. Small ships, small fleets, and yet somehow they survive every battle. Against larger forces, against better technology, somehow they adapt." The council members looked at each other uneasily. "Adapt?" Governor Harris asked. "They are supposed to be primitive." Carl nodded slowly. "Primitive, yes, but unpredictable. That is the real danger. We have studied their tactics, their ships, and even then they surprise us. This ship is in a place no human should be able to reach. It means they are capable of something we do not understand." Ellen tapped a few commands into her console. "I have tried every scan method available. No jump signatures, no cloaking devices detected. Nothing. Either they are hiding in a way we cannot imagine, or they just got here." The council members exchanged worried glances. No one spoke. The idea that humans had managed to travel this far unnoticed was frightening. It was one thing to fight pirates or aliens. It was another to realize that humans could move silently into the heart of Imperial space. "Prepare the observation fleet," Carl ordered. "No weapons yet. I want eyes on this ship before we make a decision." By now, the entire command tower was buzzing with activity. Ships were dispatched, scanning drones launched, and every sensor in the northern sector was pushed to its limits, but nothing gave a clear picture. The humans remained unseen except for their massive silhouette drifting through space, slow but deliberate. Hours passed. Carl and Ellen watched the readouts carefully. Every movement the ship made seemed simple, almost lazy but precise. It avoided patrol paths, sensor grids, and even natural hazards in space. There was a quiet confidence in its movements, something calculated, something the Empire could not predict. Ellen broke the silence. It's like they are testing us, watching us. Waiting to see how we react, Carl nodded. That is exactly what it feels like. Humans are patient. They wait, they observe, and then they strike. But if we panic, that is when we will make mistakes. Meanwhile, aboard the human vessel, Captain Daniel Ford stood on the bridge. He was calm, almost casual, as he observed the galaxy through his view screen. His crew, familiar with the strange ways of Imperial space, moved efficiently but without urgency. They had traveled far, and now they were close. Approaching the northern sector, Daniel said quietly. Keep our speed low. Do not give them a reason to detect us beyond what they already know. Lieutenant Rachel Moore nodded. Sir, the readings show minimal interference. Their fleet seems confused. They do not know we are here. Daniel allowed a small smile. Good. Let them worry. It will make things easier later. Back at the command tower, Carl and his officers were growing more anxious. Every scan seemed to bring more questions than answers. How had a human ship traveled so far? How had it avoided detection? And why was it here now, so close to the heart of the Empire? Captain Ross finally spoke up. Admiral, we should consider the possibility they are not here by accident. Humans do nothing by accident. Carl's face hardened. I know, that is what terrifies me. Every time humans appear, they change the rules. Every time they fight, every time they explore, they do it differently, and we never anticipate their next move. The hours dragged on. Tension grew with every passing minute. Imperial officers were used to command, to strategy, to power, but nothing prepared them for the quiet approach of a single human battleship. It was simple, almost unassuming, yet it carried with it a sense of threat that no scanner, no calculation, no map could measure. Finally, as night fell over the command tower, Ellen spoke. Admiral, I have never seen anything like this. We have waited for decades for an enemy to reach this far. We have war plans, contingencies, fleets ready, and none of it applies here. None of it. Carl looked out the window at the distant stars. Somewhere among them, the human ship drifted closer, quiet, deliberate, waiting. Then we adapt, he said slowly. We will watch, we will learn, and we will respond, but we must not panic. That is what humans count on. The room was silent. Outside, the stars shone, indifferent to the fears and commands of men, and somewhere in the darkness, the human battleship continued its slow approach, unseen yet impossible to ignore. Hours later, a small red alert flashed again. A message, short and clear, appeared on the main console. Do you know how close you are to being noticed? Carl stared at the screen. He knew one thing for certain. The Empire had underestimated humans, and that mistake would change everything. The Council murmured among themselves. The panic that had been hidden behind official comm began to show. What kind of humans could travel so far, so silently, and arrive so near the heart of Imperial space? Ellen whispered, almost to herself, They are already inside our walls. We just don't see them yet, Carl turned to her. And that is exactly what makes them dangerous. Watch them, learn, and pray we are not too late. The northern sector, once considered safe, was no longer under the Empire's control. Somewhere in the darkness, humans were watching. And for the first time in centuries, the Empire realized that it might not be the strongest in the galaxy. The council chamber was quiet, but the tension was thicker than the metal walls around them. Admiral Carl Benson sat at the main table, staring at the display that showed the human battleship, still drifting slowly in the northern sector. It had been hours since the first sighting, and still, the humans remained calm, almost taunting. Lieutenant Ellen Moore scrolled through the sensor readings again. Admiral, I don't understand. We've checked every possible detection method, and still we cannot track their engines or any signs of propulsion. They are moving without leaving any trace. Carl shook his head. This is why we are in trouble. Humans do not fight like other species. They do not rely on sheer numbers. They do not depend on raw technology. They rely on thinking we cannot predict. Captain Kevin Ross leaned forward. Sir, I have gone through old intelligence reports on human ships. We assumed their fastest ships could reach the outer systems in standard jump paths. But this ship seems to have bypassed every jump route we know. It came from nowhere. Ellen frowned. It is impossible. If it came from nowhere, that means they could be anywhere. They could already be in our inner systems without our knowledge. The council members gasped at the idea. Governor Paul Harris slammed his hand on the table. That is unacceptable. How can they get this close without being detected? We have sensors, satellites, patrol fleets. Nothing is supposed to reach this far. Carl raised his hand, silencing him. Exactly, that is the point. Humans do not follow the rules we expect. They think differently. They use methods we do not understand. That is what we are seeing now. Ellen turned to the main screen. The human battleship had slowed. Its silhouette appeared almost simple, but there was an elegance to it, a strange confidence. "Admiral, look at this," she said. "Even though we cannot see engines or weapons, it is moving with purpose. It avoids our patrol paths, our sensor grids, and even the asteroid clusters. It's like it knows exactly where to go." Carl leaned closer. "It does. Humans are patient. They plan, they observe. And then they act when we are weakest. This ship is not just a battleship. It is a message, a warning." Captain Ross tapped his data pad. "Sir, I have cross-referenced all known human tactics. They usually operate in small groups. They avoid large fleets. They can escape situations that would destroy any other species. Their movements are unpredictable, but they are calculated. They plan years in advance. That is why we cannot catch them." The council members whispered among themselves, fear growing in their voices. The idea that humans could be planning decades ahead was frightening. The Empire had always relied on overwhelming numbers and fast responses. Humans did not work that way. Humans used time as a weapon and patience as a shield. Ellen's hand shook slightly as she typed on her console. "Admiral, I think I see a pattern. They are not moving randomly. They are making micro jumps, very small, precise jumps. They are invisible to our long-range sensors because the jumps are too small to detect, but they add up. That's how they got here." Carl's eyes widened. "Micro jumps, that is brilliant. It explains everything. They could have been moving closer for weeks, months, or even years, and we never knew. They have been planning this for a long time, and now they are here in the heart of our space." Governor Harris leaned back, his face pale. "So what you are saying is that this is not a one-time event. Humans could be anywhere. They could be inside our systems already. How do we fight an enemy that is already inside your walls before you even see them?" Carl's voice was calm but firm. "We don't fight them the way we fight others. Humans are not predictable. They are not limited by our rules. We must observe, understand, and adapt. And most importantly, we must not panic." Ellen's fingers flew across the console. "Sir, there is more. The ship is transmitting, but it's not a weapon signal. It is data. It's collecting information on our fleets, our defenses, even our planets. They are learning us. They are studying us before they do anything else." Kevin Ross shook his head. "This is worse than I thought. Humans do not just attack with force. They attack with knowledge. They understand their enemy before striking, and by the time we realize it, they are already too far ahead." Carl's jaw tightened. "Exactly. That is why they are dangerous. They do not need to rush. They do not need massive fleets. One ship properly positioned can give them more advantage than an entire armada." The council debated, raising voices and arguing over plans. Some wanted immediate retaliation, others wanted to wait. Governor Harris demanded a strike fleet. Captain Ross suggested traps. Ellen argued for observation, but Carl knew they had no real option. The humans had already won the psychological battle. They had forced fear, uncertainty, and doubt into the Empire's heart. Meanwhile, aboard the human ship, Captain Daniel Ford stood calmly on the bridge. The crew moved efficiently, but with no urgency. They were aware of the Empire's panic, even though the humans were nowhere near direct conflict. Daniel looked at the northern sector's star systems. "They are waking up to us," he said quietly. Lieutenant Rachel Moore nodded. "Yes, sir, but they are still slow to respond. Their fleets are scattered. They are trying to understand us. They have not learned yet that we do not act like them." Daniel smiled faintly. "Let them learn. By the time they understand, it will be too late. We do not need to fight to show power. We only need to exist where they cannot fully control us." Back in the Empire, the Council continued to scramble for answers. Admiral Carl Benson tried to calm the room. "Focus on understanding. We cannot attack blindly. They are patient. They can wait decades if needed. We need to be smarter. We need to see what they see, understand what they understand." Ellen studied the sensor data carefully. "Admiral, their micro jumps make them almost invisible to detection, but I think I can predict the next jump. It's based on gravitational fields and star positions. If we track it, we might anticipate their moves. Carl nodded slowly. Good, focus on that, track them, watch them. Learn and prepare for what comes next. Humans are patient, but they also act when the moment is right. If we want to survive, we must be ready. The tension in the room grew as the hours passed. Every officer felt it. The humans were near, yet unseen. The Empire's centuries of control seemed fragile. They had fought rebellions, alien attacks, and traitors, but none of that compared to this. A single human ship moving silently had made the Empire doubt itself. Governor Harris finally broke the silence. We need a plan. We cannot just sit here and wait. What do you suggest, Admiral? Carl leaned back in his chair. We watch, we study, and we prepare. Any aggressive move now could trigger something we cannot stop. Humans are not reckless. They do not act without reason. If we rush, we lose. Ellen added quietly, they are teaching us patience the hard way. They are showing us that strength is not just in weapons or numbers, but in strategy, foresight, and adaptability. Captain Ross looked out the window toward the stars. I don't like it. I have been in countless battles, but this is different. They are not attacking, yet we feel like we are losing. Carl nodded. That is the point. They are already winning, not with fire or explosions, but with fear, with uncertainty. And until we understand them, we cannot hope to defeat them. The council chamber remained tense. Outside, the stars were quiet. The human ship continued its slow approach, precise, careful, patient. It avoided every patrol, bypassed every sensor, and moved closer to the Empire's core without a single alarm being raised in its systems. Lieutenant Ellen Moore continued to study the readings. I think they are showing us something, Admiral. They are teaching us what we cannot see. Every jump, every movement is a lesson, and if we learn it, we might survive. If we fail, she trailed off, knowing the answer. Carl put his hand on her shoulder. If we fail, it will be our own mistake. Humans are clever, yes. But they are not invincible. We can match them if we think like them, but we must start now. Watch, learn, understand. Hours turned into days. The council remained on edge. Every report from the northern sector brought more questions than answers. The humans remained calm, confident, and unseen. And every hour the Empire's leaders realized something chilling. They were not in control. Not of the sector, not of the fleet, not of the humans. A small alarm sounded. Ellen checked the console and looked up, her face pale. Admiral, the ship is transmitting again, but this time it's a signal, not an attack. Data, observation, they are watching us and perhaps learning everything about our defenses. Carl stared at the readout. That confirms it. They are not just here to fight. They are here to understand, and when they understand, we will see how clever humans truly are. Outside, the stars were silent, but the Empire felt the weight of every passing second. The humans were near, unseen, and unstoppable, not with force, but with mind, patience, and strategy. The Empire had learned a hard truth. Humans were not like any other enemy they had faced. And that realization would change everything. The Imperial Council chamber was tense, filled with whispers and uneasy glances. For hours, Admiral Carl Benson and his officers had monitored the human battleship. Every move it made seemed deliberate yet slow, and every hour that passed brought more fear into the hearts of the Empire's leaders. Governor Paul Harris slammed his fist on the table. We cannot sit here any longer. They are too close. Do you understand what this means? They could be inside the heart of our space by the morning. Every plan we have is useless. Ellen Moore remained calm at her console, typing rapidly. Governor, panic will not help us. We still do not know their intentions. This ship has not fired a weapon. Not yet. They are observing, learning, waiting. Waiting? Harris shouted. We don't have time for their waiting. Every minute we delay is a minute they gain. If they want war, we will be unprepared. Carl raised his hand to quiet the room. Governor, listen to me. Humans do not act like any enemy we have faced. They do not rush. They do not fight to show power. They plan, they observe, and they strike only when the moment is perfect. If we make a reckless move, we play into their hands. The council fell silent. Even the governor's anger had to pause at Carl's words. The room felt smaller, tighter, as though the human ship's presence pressed against the walls themselves. Captain Kevin Ross leaned over the console, pointing at the holographic map. Sir, look at their position. They are near the outer edge of the northern sector, but their trajectory, it is strange. They are avoiding our patrol lanes, ignoring our sensor fields. They are not just moving, they are predicting us. Ellen nodded. Yes, every movement is calculated. They are teaching us what they think we will do. They are setting traps with their absence. They are showing us how easily they can avoid detection. Carl exhaled slowly. They are human, and that is what makes them dangerous, not strength, not speed, not weapons. They use intelligence, they adapt, and they make us doubt ourselves. We are already losing control without a single shot being fired. Governor Harris groaned. We need answers, send scouts, attack, do something. Carl shook his head. No, any attack now could backfire. Humans do not fight like others. They can escape, hide, or use our aggression against us. They do not need fleets to dominate. One ship positioned right can change the balance of power. That is what we are seeing. The council debated, voices rising and falling. Some suggested sending a full fleet into the northern sector to flush the humans out. Others argued for defensive maneuvers, creating traps, mines, or sensor arrays. But Carl knew, from decades of experience, that none of it would work. Humans did not respond like other enemies. The Empire's usual strategies were useless against them. Hours passed and tension grew. The human ship moved closer to the northern sector's heart, yet still showed no aggressive action. Then, a signal appeared on the main console. The council leaned in as Ellen decoded the transmission. It was a message, short, simple, calm, yet its tone carried weight. Greetings, we have been observing your fleets, your patrols, your defenses. We are close because we want to understand, not to attack, yet. Consider this a warning. Humans are patient, you should be too. The council chamber went silent, not one voice spoke. Even Governor Harris, usually quick to anger, looked pale and uncertain. Carl studied the message carefully. See, they are teaching us patience. They are not here to destroy immediately. They are here to make us realize we are vulnerable. That is their strength. One ship can do this. One ship can make us tremble without firing a weapon. Imagine what they could do with hundreds. Captain Ross shook his head. Sir, we cannot let this continue. The Empire cannot stand idly by while a single ship mocks us. We must strike even if it is risky. Carl's eyes were steady. And if we strike, we lose. Humans do not fight blindly. They will predict our attack, escape, and leave us worse off than before. Right now, our fear is their weapon. We must resist the panic, learn from it. That is how we fight humans, by thinking like them, not with blind force. Ellen nodded slowly. They are already showing us their methods. Patience, observation, adaptability. That is all they need to dominate. We must do the same if we want to survive. Meanwhile, aboard the human battleship, Captain Daniel Ford observed the Empire's reactions with quiet satisfaction. The Empire was struggling, arguing, panicking, and yet they had not fired a single shot. Every command, every plan, every fleet deployment was being predicted. Sir, Lieutenant Rachel Moore said, watching the readouts, they are trying to anticipate us. They do not understand how we operate. They are cautious, fearful. They are learning. Daniel smiled faintly. Good, let them learn. The closer they watch, the more mistakes they make. The more confident they think they are, the easier it will be later. Observation is a weapon, just like our weapons are, and right now we are winning without lifting a single gun. Back in the council chamber, Admiral Benson tried to maintain calm. Governor, we have no proof of hostile intent. We do not know why they are here. But their presence alone is enough to change everything. Humans are not like other species. They do not fight openly. They manipulate, adapt, and wait, and that is why we feel powerless. Governor Harris groaned. We are powerless. A single ship has made us question everything. We cannot control our own space. How do we fight an enemy like that? Carl's voice was steady. By understanding them, by thinking differently, that is the only way. Panic and force will fail. Observation, patience, and strategy, that is how humans are beaten. And if we do not adapt, we will fall before they even act. Hours later, reports from distant sectors began to arrive. Ships patrolling near the Empire's borders had detected subtle anomalies, signs that the humans might not be alone. Micro jumps, unexplained movement, intelligence gathered silently. Every report confirmed the Empire's growing fear. Humans were not just in the northern sector. They might already be inside systems no one expected. Governor Harris slammed his fist again. This is unacceptable. We must take action. We cannot wait while humans walk through our space like ghosts. Carl raised his hand. No, action without understanding is what humans want. They are teaching us a lesson. One we cannot afford to ignore. They want us to panic. They want us to act recklessly. And we will if we do not resist. Ellen added quietly, Sir, they are teaching us more than patience. They are showing us how fragile our control really is. For centuries, we have believed in our fleets, our weapons, our technology. But one human ship shows that none of it matters unless we think like them. Captain Ross muttered. It is terrifying. I have commanded fleets across 100 systems. I have fought wars, but this is different. They are not attacking, yet they have already made us weaker in spirit. Carl nodded. That is exactly what they are doing. Humans do not need to destroy everything to win. They win by making you doubt yourself, by making you see your own weaknesses, by making you hesitate. That is why they are dangerous. The council chamber went quiet again. Every officer felt the weight of the human ship's presence. A single vessel, drifting slowly, had caused panic, fear, and doubt. They were learning, observing, and demonstrating dominance without a single weapon fired. Outside the council chamber, fleets moved nervously, scanning the northern sector, checking sensors, preparing for attacks that Carl had forbidden. Every officer on every ship felt the same unease. Humans were near yet unseen, and no matter how hard they tried, the Empire could not predict their next move. A small alarm rang in the council chamber. Ellen checked the console. Sir, there is another message. They are transmitting again. This one is different. It is addressed personally to the High Command. Carl studied the message carefully. The words were calm, polite, yet firm. We have been in your space for weeks, observing, understanding, waiting. You see us as a threat. That is your choice. Know this, our presence alone changes the balance. We do not need to act. You already feel our influence. Your fleets, your leaders, your strategies, they are all being measured. Humans are patient, and you are learning. The council stared at the screen in stunned silence. The words confirmed what Carl had feared. The humans were not attacking, yet their power was undeniable. They had turned the Empire's fear into their weapon. Governor Harris finally whispered, "We cannot win, not like this." "How do you fight an enemy that controls your mind before it touches your ships?" Carl replied, quietly but firmly. "By learning, by watching, by adapting, and by understanding that humans do not play by the rules, they create their own rules. And if we want to survive, we must do the same." Outside, the human ship continued its silent observation. No weapons fired, no aggression shown, and yet the Empire knew with a weight they could not shake, humans were winning. Not with force, but with mind, patience, and strategy. For the first time in centuries, the Empire realized it might not be the strongest, and the humans, quiet and deliberate, had already begun to prove it. The council chamber was quiet, almost too quiet. Admiral Carl Benson and his officers had spent days monitoring the human battleship, and the tension was thicker than ever. Reports came in constantly from every sector, and each one confirmed the same troubling fact. Humans were everywhere, yet nowhere. One ship, a single battleship, had caused fear, confusion, and doubt across the Empire. Governor Paul Harris sat at the head of the table, his face pale. "This is beyond comprehension. One ship and we are shaking. Our fleets are moving, our leaders are panicking, and yet the ship has done nothing violent. Nothing." Ellen Moore typed rapidly on her console, checking the latest sensor readings. "Governor, they are still moving slowly, but their patterns are deliberate. Every jump, every change in speed, every course adjustment, they are testing our responses. They want us to react before they act." Carl Benson leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "Yes, and that is exactly what they are doing. Humans do not need to fight openly to dominate. One ship in the right place can change the entire strategy of an empire. They make you doubt yourself, and that is their power." Captain Kevin Ross shook his head. "Admiral, we cannot stand like this. We cannot just watch. They are in our space. They know our defenses better than we do ourselves. What happens if they decide to attack?" Carl's voice was calm but firm. "Then we must be ready, but attacking blindly will only make things worse. We cannot fight humans the way we fight others. Humans think differently. They plan differently, they adapt, and right now our fear is their weapon." Governor Harris groaned. Fear is not enough to control a galaxy. We need action, strategy, fleets." Carl shook his head slowly. "No, Governor, you do not understand. Action without understanding will fail. Humans will anticipate it. They will use it. They do not rely on brute force. They rely on thinking, patience, and adaptability, and that is what makes them unbeatable in ways we have never faced." Ellen turned to him, her face serious. "Admiral, I am seeing something now. Their movements are no longer random. They are positioning themselves deliberately near our inner systems. They are not preparing to attack. They are showing us how close they can come without being noticed. And we are noticing, but only barely." Carl's jaw tightened. Exactly. This is why they are dangerous. They do not need a fleet to dominate. They do not need a weapon to show power. One ship, properly positioned, can control our decisions, our thoughts, our plans. They have already won the psychological battle. Captain Ross leaned forward. But sir, they cannot be everywhere at once. How can one ship affect all of our sectors? Carl tapped the table. Because they are human, and humans are patient. They are everywhere if they choose to be. They study, they learn, and they wait for the perfect moment. Even a single ship can change the entire balance of power. And right now, we are feeling it. The council debated, voices rising and falling, but Carl's words settled over the room like a shadow. Humans had changed the rules of engagement. They had forced the Empire to rethink every strategy, every patrol, every fleet. And the more the Empire struggled, the more humans seemed in control. Meanwhile, aboard the human battleship, Captain Daniel Ford stood quietly on the bridge. The crew moved calmly, efficiently, but without urgency. They had watched the Empire panic for days, studied their reactions, and now they were closer to the inner systems than ever before. Lieutenant Rachel Moore glanced at him. Sir, the Empire is in chaos. They are arguing, panicking, and making mistakes. Even their fleets are unsure of what to do. It is almost too easy. Daniel smiled faintly. That is the point. Humans do not need to fire weapons to win. One ship, one presence is enough. The Empire underestimates patience, foresight, and observation. And they are learning it the hard way. Rachel nodded. So we just continue observing. Daniel's eyes scanned the holographic map of the Empire. Yes, observe, wait, let them show us their weaknesses. When they finally understand our methods, it will be too late. That is how humans dominate, quietly, deliberately, without unnecessary risk. Back at the council chamber, Carl Benson received reports from across the Empire. Systems previously considered safe were now showing unusual readings. Tiny micro-jumps, subtle energy fluctuations, unexplained signals. The humans were not just in the northern sector. They were moving silently through systems the Empire thought secure. Governor Harris slammed his hand on the table. We are being invaded without a shot fired. How do we fight that? Carl's voice was steady. We do not fight it the way we fight others. Humans are not invincible. They are clever, patient, and unpredictable, but they are not magical. We survive by learning, observing, and adapting. That is how we face humans. Ellen Moore looked up from her console, eyes wide. Admiral, they are sending another message. This one is longer. It explains their reasoning almost politely. Carl leaned in. Read it. Ellen typed quickly, decoding the transmission. It says, we have been in your space for weeks. We are observing, learning, and waiting. Our presence alone is enough to show you what you cannot see. We do not attack because there is no need. You already feel our influence. Humans are patient. You are learning. Adapt or fall. The council members stared at the screen in silence. Even Governor Harris had no words. One human ship had caused more fear than any fleet or weapon the Empire had ever faced. And the calm, polite tone of the message made it worse. Carl Benson finally spoke. See, they do not need to attack. Their presence alone forces us to react, to doubt, to question everything we know. That is why humans are dangerous. Not strength, not numbers, not technology. Humans use intelligence, patience, and observation, and that is enough. Captain Kevin Ross whispered, Sir, how do we even begin to fight an enemy like that? Carl turned to him. By becoming like them. Watch, learn, predict, adapt. If we do not, they will continue to dominate without lifting a single weapon. Hours turned into days. Every report from the northern sector, every observation, every micro-jump of the human ship reinforced one truth. Humans had quietly taken control of the situation. The Empire's fleets moved nervously, patrols shifted constantly, and leaders argued endlessly. And yet the humans continued without haste, without aggression, quietly demonstrating how close they could get to the Empire's core without being noticed. Governor Harris finally muttered, We cannot rely on force. We cannot rely on fleets. How do you fight someone who wins without fighting? Carl Benson leaned forward, voice firm. You survive by thinking differently, by learning their methods, by adapting, by observing. That is how humans are beaten, or at least how you can stand a chance. And even then they may be smarter, faster, and more patient than us. That is why we must change or we fall. Ellen Moore added quietly, Sir, they are showing us that power is not in numbers or weapons. Power is in knowledge, patience, and presence. Even a single ship can dominate 1,000 fleets if they use their mind. Captain Ross looked at the holographic map, seeing the tiny movements of the human ship perfectly positioned. It is terrifying. One ship and they control everything we know. Our fleets, our decisions, even our thoughts. And we have done nothing, Carl nodded. Exactly, and that is the lesson. Humans do not conquer by fear or brute force. They conquer by making you see your own weaknesses, by showing you that your power is only as strong as your mind. And right now, we are learning that lesson. Outside the council chamber, across the Empire, the fleets moved cautiously, scanning sectors, checking sensors, preparing for attacks that might never come. The humans continued their silent observation, moving slowly, deliberately, studying every response. Their presence alone had forced the Empire to change everything: plans, patrols, fleets, and even thinking. Lieutenant Ellen Moore finally spoke, voice calm but filled with awe. "Sir, I think we are beginning to understand. They are not just a threat. They are teaching us, and if we learn, we may survive. If we fail, we fall." Carl Benson nodded, staring at the glowing map of the human ship. "Yes. And even if we survive, we will never see humans the same way again. They are patient, intelligent, and unstoppable in ways we cannot fight directly. And that is why they have already won the battle quietly without a single shot fired." The council remained silent. Outside, the stars glimmered, indifferent to the fears and panic of men. Somewhere in the darkness, the human ship drifted, calm, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. And for the first time in centuries, the Empire understood a truth they had ignored. Humans did not need fleets or weapons to dominate. Humans only needed patience, intelligence, and the courage to move unseen. The Empire had learned its most important lesson too late. Power was not measured by size or intimidation, but by how close an enemy could come before being noticed. Humanity had already proven it. The council chamber fell into a quiet reverence. The humans were near, and the Empire was forced to see that their greatest enemy was not firepower, but mind, strategy, and quiet presence. And in the endless darkness of space, the human battleship continued its watch, silent, patient, and victorious without firing a single shot.